Hi kids, welcome to Disney Animation Reviews. I'm Josiah Melky, and today we're finally finishing up the package films era of Disney feature animation. We are talking about Walt Disney's 11th full-length animated masterpiece, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. As I've mentioned several times before in my reviews of the other package films, they had to do package films, combinations of several different shorts, to keep the Disney studio alive during and after World War II, due to financial failures of full-bodied animated Disney films from the early 40s. Walt had actually started planning Wind in the Willows, based off the book by Kenneth Grahame, in 1938, after the release of Snow White. By 1941, an early story version of the film was finished, or storyboarded anyway, but it repeatedly kept getting delayed due to World War II and problems with the story. After the war, Walt tried to get Wind in the Willows back in development, but it was still having problems. At the same time, Walt had started working on The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, based off the story by Washington Irving. Ultimately, Walt decided to pair the stories together. Originally, Wind in the Willows was going to be paired with Mickey and the Beanstalk, and it was going to be titled Two Fabulous Characters. Ultimately, Mickey and the Beanstalk got paired with Bongo and became Fun and Fancy Free, while Wind in the Willows was paired with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and was changed from Two Fabulous Characters to its final name, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, first released in fall of 1949. It did pretty well at the box office, and got really good reviews. In fact, if you read the Rotten Tomatoes scores of animated Disney films, it's the highest rated package film from Disney Animation at that time since Fantasia, nearly a decade earlier. I saw Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad when I checked it out on home video back in 1999 to celebrate, or no wait, not 1999, 2009, to celebrate its 60th anniversary. I had seen songs, or a song from it, Mr. Toad's Merrily on Our Way song, on Disney Sing-Along videos, but I had not seen the whole thing until I checked it out and watched it in 2009. It was good, but not as good as I thought it was gonna be. But it has its merits, so here is my thoughts on The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. The live-action framework for this one is a library where the narrators go through different stories and pick ones they think will fit well for audiences. The first story is The Wind in the Willows, narrated by Basil Rathbone, probably best known for playing Sherlock Holmes in live-action films. The story is about J. Thaddeus Toad and how his thing for manias, stuff that he gets obsessed with, like a horse and cart, frequently gets him into trouble, financially. The last straw comes when he trades Toad Hall for his stolen motor car, and then is wrongfully accused of stealing the motor car himself and going to jail. Luckily, his friends come to help him, and they try to help clear Toad's name by getting the deed to Toad Hall back, to show that what Mr. Toad says about trading Toad Hall for the motor car is indeed true. I know that The Wind in the Willows is, let me think about this. It's a pretty good animal story. I never read the book, but the Disney version is pretty good, and inspired a ride that's at Disneyland, and they used to have it at Walt Disney World before it got replaced with the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh ride. But they still have it at Disneyland, where you actually ride along with Mr. Toad throughout the story on the ride. It's a little scary for kids. At one point in the ride, he goes to hell. But if you want to see if it ends happily for him, you'll have to ride it yourself. But I skipped it, because after seeing the story and the rest of the movie, I didn't want to go on the Mr. Toad ride. But Wind in the Willows, nice story. At least one good song with the Merrily on Our Way song. Basil Rathbone, great narrator. And there are some other good characters too, like the Weasels and Mr. Toad's friends. Then the second segment is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, also known as the story of Ichabod Crane, narrated by the great singer Bing Crosby. Ichabod Crane is the new school teacher, and although often made fun of for being a bookworm, he's really a nice guy, and eventually attracts the attention of the wealthy woman Katrina von Tassel. This lands Ichabod in deep water with the town bully, Brom Bones, who later served as inspiration for Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. When Brom Bones hears that Ichabod is superstitious, however, he figures he can get back at Ichabod by telling the story of the Headless Horseman, a guy who lost his head and on Halloween night haunts the local cemetery looking for a new head to chop off and use as his own. Ichabod, of course, believes the story, and we see him actually meeting the Headless Horseman as he's heading home, and we see whether or not he escapes, becoming the Headless Horseman's next victim. I have to say I didn't like the Ichabod Crane story as much as Wind in the Willows, but again, great narration and singing by Bing Crosby this time. The Headless Horseman's son is a pretty good villain son, but it's not as good as villain sons from the Renaissance era. It's definitely no Gaston's son, I'll tell you that. But if you like something different and scary, then I guess Legend of Sleepy Hollow isn't a total waste. So that's The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. It's only 2 stories, like fun and fancy-free. But if you ask people which one is their favorite, they're most likely going to say The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. The singing and narration is actually very decent. Great characters, at least in the Mr. Toad segment. Ichabod Crane I could care less for. But otherwise, if you're looking for something different and unique from Disney in terms of storytelling, then I guess you could do far worse than The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. If you haven't seen it and want to see it, check it out. But probably just watch it once. At least the whole movie once. And then if you want to watch one of the 2 stories more than once, you can probably find them by themselves online. Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, like Fun and Fancy Free and Melody Time, was first released on home video 50 years after its initial release, which Ichabod and Mr. Toad was released in 1949, so its home video release was 50 years later in 1999. It was also released on video and DVD as part of the Walt Disney Gold Classic Collection in fall of 2000. And was released on Blu-ray as part of a 2-movie collection in summer of 2013 with Fun and Fancy Free. The bonus features on the Gold Classic Collection version are what you typically get for Gold Classic Collection bonus features, a trivia game and a read-along storybook, but you'll also get a sing-along for Mr. Toad's song Merrily on Our Way, and the animated short Lonesome Ghost starring Mickey, Donald, and Goofy as ghost hunters. Plus, if you get all the trivia game questions correct, you'll get another short, Susie the Little Blue Coupe, about a little blue car who wows admirers with her beauty. And her design, with her eyes in the windshield, later provided inspiration for the design of the characters in the Disney Pixar movie, Cars. So, there you go. So, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is the last animated Disney package film of the 40s, and the last one for almost 30 years until we get to The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. While most of the package films are definitely far worse than Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Ichabod and Mr. Toad is a bit more enjoyable. I only saw it once because it was for an anniversary thing, and then I decided, okay, once was enough, I don't need to watch it again. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. It's definitely better than most of the Disney package films. If you only see it once, that's great, but if you don't see it, you're not missing out on much. Except for a couple of goofy characters. So that's it for the package films era. Coming up on Saturday, we're back to full-bodied animated Disney films with their next princess story, Cinderella. Until then, remember, when you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. Bye!